So, the NFL draft is just around the corner, and I'm doing a series where I rank my top prospects at every position. Today, I'm going to be doing defensive tackle. Now, I've already done 3 videos so far, so you can check them out if you'd like to, but let's get into the defensive tackle class. And in my opinion, this class is not all that great. There's some decent talent here and there, but most of this class is typically run stuffing nose tackles or undersized defensive tackles that can rush the passer. There are very few prospects that can really do both. And I will talk about a few that I think fit the mold, but they are pretty few and far in between. But anyways, here's my grading scale. And spoiler alert for this video, we're not seeing any plus starters. But let's go ahead and get into the first prospect. So my first defensive tackle I will talk about is Caden McDonald from Ohio State. Now this defensive tackle list is going to be pretty interesting in that everybody will have a different board because it really depends on what they value. And while I do like my defensive tackles with the ability to rush the passer, and Caden McDonald doesn't really do that, he does such an elite job at stopping the run that, to be honest, I don't really care that much. Caden McDonald is so good at stopping the run that honestly, I would not be surprised that whichever team picks him ends up being top 10 in run defense this upcoming season. He is that good and that much of a difference maker in one particular point of the game. That's why I'm rating him so high. He is absolutely elite. He is by far the best run stuffing defensive player in this draft. When offensive linemen try to move him, they literally can't. He is an elite anchor, and that's something I can't say for most of the defensive tackles in this draft. While some have great anchors, and some even have good anchors, there are very few defensive tackles in this class that I would consider elite anchors, and Caden McDonald has that. And he is extremely strong too, because even while offensive linemen can't move him, he can move them back. And give a play long enough time, he will shove a center right into the quarterback's lap. He's not getting the sack, but probably somebody else on that defensive line will end up getting that sack. And he shows up in big moments. In the playoffs, multiple times, he will have massive games when it matters most. He had 8 tackles against Texas and 8 more against Penn State in 2024. Huge days. Now, like I said, there's not much upside to him rushing the passer. He just really can't. It's either bull rush or he gets nothing at all. When it comes to passing downs, he's prone to taking the play off. So that is a bit of a concern, and personally why I have not rated him all that high. But he's still my number 1 defensive tackle, just because of how good he is at one phase of the game. My D tackle 2 in this draft is Christian Miller from Georgia. Now, this guy can do a little bit of both. Now, he is a much better run stuffer than a pass rusher. Now, he's not nearly as good as Caden McDonald, but he's great in his own right. And why I like him so much, he has some upside as a pass rusher. He has a great first step, he shoves linemen back very far, and he actually does have a couple pass rush moves. Now, it's not a lot and still rather underdeveloped, but I do like his upside because great pass rushers have a great first step, and he does have that. So that shows some upside that if he can develop further, he can actually be a great defensive tackle in the league. Plus, with his ability to rush the passer, that means he has some versatility along the line and won't be just stuck playing nose tackle, which means he has more time on the field to really disrupt the game. But like I said, his bread and butter is stopping the run, and he's excellent at that. However, we need to look at his downsides. Number 1, I've already mentioned one. While he does have pass rush upside, it's still rather underdeveloped. He has the physical tools for it. It just hasn't quite showed up in college so far, so it's likely going to take some time to develop, but I like his upside if it ever does. And he's had a little bit of tackling inconsistency, which is a little bit worrying, especially at defensive tackle. And you definitely want your defensive tackle to make tackles when they have the opportunity to do so. And he can be a little bit over-aggressive, which offenses can definitely exploit. And he had a little bit of an injury history. He had a shoulder injury in 2024. He had surgery for it and was out for the early part of 2025. So the fact that it's relatively recent, that does need monitoring in his rookie year at least. But to be honest, I think it'll be fine. He should have been well recovered by this point. But this is one of the few defensive tackles that I actually like the upside for. Plus, he's got a stable floor as a strong run defender. My defensive tackle 3 in this draft is Peter Woods. Now, if you've been following draft content for the entire offseason, you know how hyped Peter Woods has been. He's been unanimously a first-round talent. I don't really see it that way. Now, his pass rush upside is excellent. His first step is very explosive. He can shove linemen back, and he actually has some production as a pass rusher at defensive tackle. Plus, he has excellent flexibility, and that shouldn't be possible with a man at that size. And he's quite fast because he can chase down running backs from pretty far away, and that is rather impressive for a defensive tackle. Now, I do have some serious concerns. His run defense, to be honest, is not ideal, especially for a defensive tackle, so that will likely mess with his playing time. It's personally why I have Christian Miller over him, because Christian Miller has a reliable floor as a run defender while developing some pass rush upside. While Peter Woods has great pass rush upside, his floor is a little bit lower than Christian Miller, in my opinion. His gap integrity is not ideal, and frequently on his tape, I saw him get washed out in run defense, which left wide open lanes for the running back to exploit. And that's not what you want to see from a defensive tackle. Now, you could have a rush D tackle who's primarily a pass rusher, but with a prospect as hyped as Peter Woods, I came out rather disappointed with his film. That's why I have him at number 3, though I do think he's still a great talent, and at worst, he's a rotational pass rusher. But I think he can be more than that, and that's why even in this class, I still have him at number 3 overall. My D tackle number 4 in this draft is Lee Hunter from Texas Tech. Now, this is a defensive tackle that can really do it all. He can rush the passer, as he is extremely effective at pushing guards back into the lap of the quarterback and even getting off the guards to get the sack. And he's absolutely excellent in run defense as well. He's got a very strong anchor, and he forces double teams on him, which frees up other lanes for his teammates. And that worked out rather well at Texas Tech when you have David Bailey and Romello Height as your edges. So this was a great combo, and he showed some excellent tape. And he also showed a lot of production against high-level competition for a long time. So that shows great experience and shows he is ready to go into the NFL and produce right away. Now, the issue with him is, as an athlete, he's mediocre. Now, he's extremely strong and powerful and routinely shoves linemen back, but when it comes to pursuit, not all that ideal. His first step is okay. It's nothing special. It's not terrible. It's whatever. So that does also limit his upside as a pass rusher, and he has limited pass rush moves and primarily relies on his bull rush. While it is effective, you'd like to see him do more than just that. Plus, his lateral agility is quite mediocre, and his testing does show that. While he showed great production in college, his ceiling is pretty capped, but even then, I think he should be a reliable starter in the middle of the field. And my number 5 defensive tackle in this draft is Grayson Halton from Oklahoma. Now, this guy is probably one of my favorite pass rushing D tackles in this draft, plus he's able to stop the run in somewhat. But let's talk about the good first. Now, his first step is absolutely explosive. Probably the best first step out of anybody I've talked about so far. And he has some great pass rush moves, probably the most out of anybody on the list so far. So his pass rush ability is much more advanced, and that does prove to have some great upside. And even in the run game, he's very effective. He finds the ball carrier routinely and constantly gets into the backfield. And that's what you would love to see from your defensive tackles. However, like I said, there are very imperfect prospects at defensive tackle. And the main one for him is he's undersized. Now his height is fine and his weight is fine, but his arms are really short. So that really limits how well he can control blockers. And oftentimes, while his weight isn't terrible, it isn't ideal. And routinely, I saw him fail to hold up against double teams. So his anchor is not nearly as reliable as some of the others on the list. So that also limits his playtime, in my opinion. He's fantastic on pass downs because he can reliably get pressure on the quarterback and sometimes turn them into sacks. However, run defense, while he can do it, it's not nearly as high level as some of the others on the list. So he's personally, to me, not necessarily a 3-down player. And his combine numbers were rather disappointing. However, I do think he moves much better on tape than what his combine numbers show. He has good lateral agility, but for whatever reason, that just didn't show up at the combine. And teams will take note of that. To me, he's still a day 2 type of prospect, but out of all the defensive tackles remaining, I think he has the highest upside as he can reliably rush the passer and is quality against the run. My number 6 defensive tackle in this draft is Caleb Proctor from southeastern Louisiana. Now, this is probably a college most people have never heard of and likely does not have many draft prospects in their history. However, Caleb Proctor is probably the single best pass rushing defensive tackle in this draft. And to me, it's not particularly close. His first step quickness is legitimately special. He has a bag of pass rush moves and routinely sack the quarterback. And while he did primarily play against FCS competition, which quite low competition, he showed up against LSU and had 2 sacks against them. That shows he can do it against quality opponents, and he also showed up against FBS competition in the Shrine Bowl, routinely dominating one-on-one situations. So his pass rush upside, probably the single highest in this class. Why I have him at number 6, he's completely worthless against the run. Like, legitimately, he is undersized. His weight is very light for a defensive tackle. To be honest, if he played at edge, I'd be a lot more comfortable, but even then, I don't think it improves it a whole lot because his anchor against the run is quite unreliable, and it showed up against FCS competition. Not even just FBS competition. So, against LSU, it showed up, and even against some tackle that would probably go into accounting later on, it was showing up. So, yeah, his run defense is pretty unreliable. His tackling is not reliable. But, again, his pass rushing ability, probably one of the best in the class. My number 7 defensive tackle on this list is Dominique Orange from Iowa State. Now, this guy is a true nose tackle. I mean, against the run, excellent. He has an extremely strong anchor, and offensive linemen struggle to move him. And it shows when teams try to run up the middle, they don't really succeed all that often. And he's really strong. You can see him visibly pop offensive linemen back. And he's got great length. Even when he's being blocked, he can still make the tackle. However, his upside is rather limited to me. He already has tackling inconsistencies, which is quite worrying for a defensive tackle, especially one that's really only a nose tackle. And his pass rush ability, pretty much non-existent. He has 1 sack in 4 seasons. You do not expect this guy to provide any ability as a pass rusher. He is primarily a nose tackle. He will go in on run-specific downs, and he will do very well on those downs, but any other down, you probably take him off the field. Plus, he also struggles to disengage from blocks, which was routinely a problem. Multiple times, I did see a running back come near him, and he was just not able to make the play on him. However, he has such a strong anchor that oftentimes that another teammate will make the tackle anyway. So it's not that big of an issue, but it is an issue to note and is an area for growth for him to improve overall as a nose tackle. My number 8 defensive tackle in this draft is Renee Conga from Louisville. Now, this was a surprise when I was watching day 3 prospects. I was legitimately not expecting a prospect this solid to be available so late, and to be honest, I think he could be drafted earlier than some people expect. He actually has upside as both a pass rusher and a run defender. However, I do think he's better as a pass rusher. He's got fluid hips, a good first step, and routinely made plays on the quarterback. He has solid length, very good speed, very good power, and very fluid hips. So he has a lot of upside as a pass rusher. As a run defender, he's quality. I wouldn't say he's the greatest run defender I've seen in this class, but he's definitely good enough where you could see him be on the field for 3 downs because he's reliable enough. Now, the issue I have with him is his anchor is a little bit unreliable when it comes to double teams. If he's double teamed, he can be washed out of the play, and that was an issue that popped up. Plus, he plays with high pads, so he often loses leverage. And the main reason why he's likely going to go on day 3, he's got quite the injury history, which is probably why he's down so far, even though he is a pretty quality prospect. For me, I did rate him quite low for the anchor, but his pass rush upside is legitimately impressive, so I think whoever grabs him on day 3 is going to find a gem. My number 9 defensive tackle in this class, Landon Robinson from Navy. Now, this guy might be the single most athletic defensive tackle in this class. I mean, his athletic testing numbers at his pro day, legitimately impressive, and it routinely showed up on tape. He was extremely twitchy. He was moving around like crazy. He was constantly hand fighting. He was moving around so quickly. It was a little tough to keep up with him at times, and it shows with his pass rush upside because when he can get by offensive linemen, he's routinely getting to the quarterback. However, the reason why he's so low, he's actually pretty seriously undersized. He's below 6 foot, and while I wouldn't call him light, for a defensive tackle, he is pretty light. And that does limit his upside in the run because it's pretty hit or miss, and routinely I saw him wash out of plays, be a non-factor. And while if a running back got to the second level, he would chase him down, you don't want a defensive tackle allowing a running back to get to the second level. I see Landon Robinson as a rotational pass rusher who would go in on pass rush downs and really affect the game that way. However, every down player, not happening. He also doesn't really have the power to be every down. He mostly wins on finesse and pass rush moves, not necessarily with power, and to be honest, I want my defensive tackles to walk back offensive linemen to really allow my edge rushers to make the sack. If you've been paying attention, you may notice one big name I have not mentioned so far, and that is Caleb Banks from Florida. The reason why I have him so low is because while he has great talent, great size, and his ability jumps off on tape, he's incredibly inconsistent. He has a serious foot injury, which does limit possibly how explosive he can be, and honestly, his tape was pretty infuriating. A lot of times, he would find his way into the backfield and do absolutely nothing. He would routinely miss tackles. Like, there was literally one game I was ripping my hair out because he literally would not make a tackle by himself. The only times he made a tackle was with somebody else, because every time he had an opportunity to make a solo tackle, he missed without fail. Even though he was routinely getting into the backfield, causing havoc, he came up empty nearly every time, and that was incredibly infuriating. Plus, his injury history makes me extremely concerned about his durability. I have so many concerns with Caleb Banks, even though he's extremely talented, extremely athletic, ideal size in both height, weight, and length. He has too many red flags for me to be all that high, but to be honest, this defensive tackle class is so weak, he was eventually going to show up in the top 10, even though I'm not all that high on him. But what do you guys think of my list? Do you think there should have been a prospect I mentioned? Let me know in the comment section below. But anyways, if you guys enjoyed today's video, please leave a like and sub. It's greatly appreciated and lets me know you guys enjoy these videos. Anyways, I will see you guys in my next video. Bye!